All right, hello everybody. Welcome to the Simplex-IT's office webinar number 6. My name is Michelle Bobola. Today's session is called Word, Tables, and Mail Merge. And so welcome to the session for today. Points to consider: audio is on your computer only. Unfortunately, the web client won't do sound. If you're running Windows XP, use the text window to ask questions. We will have people on hand. Problems connecting, email support Simplex-IT or call the following number, 234-380-1277. Please make sure that your microphone also is muted so that we don't get any noise during the session. And we will be putting this webinar up on YouTube soon after, as we have other webinars that we've done in the past that are on YouTube right now. The next webcast is going to be on June 12th. It will be PowerPoint enhancing presentations. We will be talking about working with the slide master, creating custom shows, working with audio and video, among other things. Other events will be listed in the next newsletter or by email. If you don't receive the newsletter, please sign up or contact Bob at bobsimplex@simplexit.com. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start this session. So I'm going to go ahead and open up Word. And today's session, the first thing we're going to talk about is working with tables. So some of you may already work with tables, you already may create tables, but this is going to teach you some tricks and just maybe working with tables. Maybe you've never used them before and want to be more proficient. Then later in the session, I'm going to use one of those Word tables to do a mail merge, as well as an Excel list, to do letters and labels. So we'll talk about that in the next part of the webcast. So the first part, I'm going to go to the Insert ribbon, and I'm going to go to Tables. And there are a couple ways that you can create a table. One of them is to go to Insert, go to Table, and then go ahead and click on the little squares to go ahead and create your table, how many columns and rows that you want, which is the way we're going to do it in a minute. The next is to go to the Insert Table to bring up the Insert Table dialog box. Then the next one is the Draw Table, where you can actually draw your table, which I'll talk about later. The Excel spreadsheet you can click on, and you can actually type your information in an Excel table, which would give you, like the little columns and the rows on the left. And if I click outside of it, it embeds it into the document. The only way to edit that would be to double click on it. It will open up, and then you see you're in Excel. You can edit it and then click on it again to embed it. I'm going to click on it once and hit my delete key to take it out. Then I'm going to go back to Table, and the final way is to use some of the table styles that are in 2013, which they're fine. You could, replace the data that's in there with your data, or you can create your own style, which we'll talk about later. So I'm going to go to Insert. I'm going to click on the drop-down arrow under Table, and I'm going to shade the first 3 squares. Now, after I shade the first 3 squares, I'm going to go ahead and type my information. So I'm going to type my headings. Now, when I type my heading, then to get to the next cell or column, I want to hit my Tab key. I don't want to hit Enter, because if I hit Enter, it's going to drop me down. This isn't the best way to size a row. I'll show you how to size rows later. And then I'm going to go ahead and type my headings. Now, you notice that I'm at the end of my table, because when I created it, I only said I wanted 1 row. So now I'm going to go ahead and hit my Tab key, and it's going to automatically go down to the next row and create a row for me. So I'm going to go ahead and type some names in here. I'm going to type my titles. Notice also that as I'm typing, my table automatically has the borders around it. So I automatically get borders when I create a table. So as I'm typing, I'm just hitting tab to go from cell to cell. And when I get to the end, I just hit tab again and I get a new row. So it just makes entering data in your table easier, and you don't have to worry about how many rows you need as you type beforehand. Now, you notice that I have my table. In the upper left-hand corner, I have a little anchor that if I click on it, it selects the entire table. So if I wanted to format my table, I could use the little mini formatting ribbon to go ahead and make my text bold, go ahead and change the color, and I can do that as I go. Also, when I create my table, I have two special contextual table tool tabs now, Design and Layout. On the Design tab, I can go ahead and change the style of the table, and we're going to do that later. And on the Layout ribbon, I can do, these are all the commands for tables that we're going to talk about. But going back to Design, if I select my table and I didn't want the borders, I'm going to go here where it says Borders, and I'm going to say No Border. When I do that, you'll notice that you don't see any of the lines on the table. So if I wanted to print it this way, because I didn't want to see the lines, I could. But when you're working with the table, you want to see some kind of line on the page so that you can know where you are if you need to size it or add columns. So I'm going to go to the Layout tab, and over here on the left, it says View Grid Lines. When I click on that, it automatically brings up the grid lines that these do not print. So if I went to Print Preview, you'll notice that the lines aren't printing, but yet I can see the guides or grid lines on my screen as a guide when I'm working with the table. So whether you want the borders or not, you still want to have the guides up or the grid lines up so that you can see them. So I'm going to go back here to do all borders and to bring back the lines that I originally had. I'm going to go to Layout now. Now, when I typed this table, I forgot to put a heading at the top of my page. And so I'm going to click in front of the word name in my first cell in my table. So whatever text you have in your first cell in your table, put your cursor to the left of it and watch. I'm going to hit my Enter key, and it's going to drop my table down. As soon as it drops it down, I can go ahead and type my title, and then I'm just going to do a quick format with my title. I'm going to make it bold, underline it, and then I'm going to center it. If I want to drop it down more now I can just put it in after, and I can just drop it down. So when I first created the table, I had put it at the top of the page. So by putting my cursor in front of the text in the first cell, I was able to drop the table down. Now, you'll notice I'm going to go to the Layout ribbon, and you have a section here where we can talk about inserting rows, inserting columns. So if I'm in a row and I want to insert one above it, I can hit Insert Above, and it'll give me a new row above. Then I can go to Delete and delete rows if I don't want them. It just makes sure that you're on the row that you want to delete. You can also insert rows below the row that you're in. So they give you that option of doing the rows top or bottom. Now I want to add a column to the right of department. So I'm going to go here to where it says Insert Right. I'm going to add a new column. So I'm going to call it Number of Employees. I'm going to go ahead here and type in some numbers. Now, if I go here to Department and I insert a column to the left, and then I take that column out, one of the things that you'll notice with my table is that it's no longer stretched out across my margin settings. Also, if you do not see the ruler on your screen, it's a good idea to go to View and check the ruler box, because when you're working in Word, it always helps to have your rulers on so you can see where you are in your document. Now, going back to Layout, You notice that when I did remove the column, it made my table small. Well, that's the purpose of this button here, this auto fit button, best button in the world. If I click on the drop down arrow and say auto fit window, it automatically resizes my table to stretch across my margin setting so that now no matter how many columns or rows I take out or delete, or basically columns that I take out or insert, it will auto fit it to my page. Also, it has an auto fit to contents button, which actually does a best fit like in Excel. It would automatically shrink down all the columns to fit the largest text in that column. I'm going to go back here and do auto fit window, and then it automatically stretches it out. You can manually size your columns. You can put your mouse on the line between of the column. So for instance, you see how I put my mouse on the line here between the columns, and I can just size them that way if I want to manually size my columns. You can also size your rows by going here and clicking and sizing it down to make your rows wider or smaller depending on what you want to do. You also have the distribute rows button, which would distribute your rows evenly, and then you have your distribute column button that would distribute your columns evenly also. So you can also make sure that they fit that way. Then you notice there's a little button in the bottom right hand corner of this cell size group that when I click on it, it brings up the property window for my table. One of the features that I can do on the table tab is center my table. So if I hit center and click OK, it is centered, but if it wasn't, it would have centered the table across the page so that it's centered on the page. The other thing with the property setting, if I click on that button and on the table tab go to options, automatically resize to fit with contents, that's why the auto fit works. If this is not checked, this will not work. I don't think that's a good thing to turn off, but if for some reason it's not working, you may want to check that to make sure that it's on so that when you go in and you size or add columns or rows, it automatically adjusts the table to fit. Because otherwise, if that's not on and you start inserting columns, the columns will go off the page. So if that's ever happened to you before, you want to make sure that your auto fit resize to fit contents is checked. Moving columns, or if you want to move a column. Now, selecting columns and rows, ways to select. Well, you can go above the column and you get that little black arrow. You can click once and that'll select the column. You can go over here to the left of the table. When you get the arrow pointing to the right, you can click once on it and it'll highlight your row. And the other ways you can do that is on the select button over in the far left hand corner to select the column that you're in. You can choose select row to select the row that you're on, and if you just want to select a cell, because you can get in the corner of the cell when you get the little black arrow and select it, but sometimes that's hard, so you can just do select cell, and then you can also select the entire table. The other way to select the table would be to click on the anchor in the corner, and that would select the table also. The other thing you have to be careful of when you select a cell, sometimes you have a cell selected and you go here to the border to size the table or that column, and you automatically size that cell. Sometimes that may be what you want to do to make that cell different, and you can do it that way, but you just want the cell selected when you size. Otherwise, when it's not, you can then just size the column manually. Moving the column, if I click here and I want to move it, I've selected the column. Now I'm going to point to the word department. I get a white arrow. I'm going to hold my left mouse button down and I'm going to drag it in front of the word title. By doing that, I've just moved the department column in front of title. So again, I'm going to select the column, then I'm going to point to the text in the first cell, and I'm going to drag it over, and I'm going to drag it here to in front of number of employees, so it puts it to the left of that column. So you can move them around if you need to. Now I'm going to make my first row wider. I'm going to select my headings, And using the mini toolbar that pops up, I'm just going to change the font. I'm going to change the font, make it bold, make it a little center of the text, and change the font color. And if I want to shade, I can click on the drop down arrow to the right of the bucket and go to the font colors, or if I want more colors, go to more colors and choose some of the colors that are in there to pick my own if I want. Then up here in the alignment section, you have, the center button I used was the regular center, but now I have my alignment buttons here where I can, the default is usually the text towards the top of the cell, but I'm going to do the middle alignment to drop it down, or you could take it and drop it down further. So you can change the alignment of the text. You can also change the text direction if you want, and you can do that. And then you can also center it if you want it using these buttons here. So you can do a horizontal and a vertical center with your text. I have a heading and I have my names in here. If I wanted to sort by last name, then I would just be in the last name column, and there's a sort button on the layout tab. I'm going to go ahead and click on the sort button, and I'm going to choose the field that I want to sort by, and then I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. So now you notice that it sorted my names in alphabetical order. The other thing when I hit sort was that it knew that I had a header row, so it didn't sort my first row. So if you, for some reason it did sort your first row, just go back and make sure that it's checked to my list has a header row. Then it will not sort the header row when you sort. So if I went over here and I wanted to sort by title and hit OK, then I could sort by title. So it gives you that option of sorting in a table in Word. So go back, sort, and hit OK. All right. Also, I wanted to mention too, the session moves fast in order to get through the topics for today, but feel free, we'll have a question and answer at the end. And also, this will be on YouTube, so if you want to watch it again and you want to take notes slower as you go, you can. All right, so I'm going to talk about the merging and splitting cells and splitting tables feature that's on the layout ribbon. Also, I wanted to talk about when you click outside of the table, those tabs will disappear. You need to be inside your table for the design and layout tab to reappear. So I'm going to select my name and my title cells. And on the in the merge section of the layout ribbon, I'm going to hit merge cells. And if you've ever used this feature in Excel, you notice that it takes the two cells and turns them into one. It didn't get rid of the text, it just took the text and merged them into one. If I wanted to do that over here to these two cells, I could hit merge cells. And now I have, a column name title here. I have department number of employees here. It gives your table a different look. If I take the two cells here and hit merge cells again, now I've turned this into one big cell. I can go to split cells, and because I have text in here, I'm going to say I want 4 columns. If I hit OK, notice that it did that. Now, sometimes though, it doesn't always match it up with for some reason, I don't know why, but it didn't match it up with the line. So what I'm going to do is just go back to undoing it to get it back to the way it was, so that it looks okay. Now, the other thing is the split cell. You can take one cell and then you can split it. Let's say that I want to split this cell into 3 parts. So I could put like A here, B here, C there, and I could have text here, and I just turned this one cell into 3 different parts. If I select these 3 parts and hit merge cells, then it turns back into one. So it gives you the option of splitting your cells or merging your cells into your, what you have to be careful of sometimes is people will go into insert and they'll insert a table in a cell and to get that look. And the problem is now you've got 2 different tables in your, it's called a nested table, but you have 2 different tables in your document. So I'm just going to go back to layout select that table using that anchor, go to delete and hit delete table to remove it, which it would have done that anyways, but if I hit undo, but I just wanted to show you in case you can't undo, because sometimes you can't always undo, especially if you've done other things and you don't want to undo the things that you've already done. So now talking about splitting tables. So I'm going to delete this row. Notice I can also right click too. That's one of the little tips that you can do. But when you select, you want to make sure when you select the row that you click to the left of the row and click, because when you right click it says delete rows. But if you click and drag across and right click, it says delete cells. Now it'll delete the cells that you've selected, but there's a difference between highlighting cells and highlighting rows. So I'm going to talk about splitting a table. So I'm going to hit split table. And what happens here is when I split the table, or sometimes people will use page breaks, and I'll talk about that later, but when you use page breaks, what happens is that you split the table now into two different parts. The problem here is now, how do you get this table back together? Well, before I could do this and I could insert a table and it would join them together. But now you notice when I highlight the last row and then this row, my table tools are gone. And if I went to insert and I inserted, say, a table, look how it brings it in, but guess what? It's not brought in, it's two separate tables again. So here's a little trick. I'm going to put my cursor in front of the word Smith. I'm going to do Alt Shift up arrow, and it just joined the two tables together. You can also do the opposite direction if you wanted to, but you would have to highlight the rows, all the rows above, because I have 3 rows here and I only had 1 row here. I'm going to select all 3 of these rows. I'm going to do Alt Shift down arrow because I want to bring the table down to connect to this one. So now these are one table. So again, that was Alt Shift and then either the up arrow or the down arrow depending on what direction you're going in, and now my table is back together. If you notice in 2013, this does not work in 10, only in 13. When I get to the bottom of the table, there's a little plus at the bottom of the table that when I click on it, it automatically adds rows. So as I click on it, I can add rows, and then I can highlight my empty rows, go to the bottom, and then I can quickly, as many rows as I select, when I click on it, I'm going to keep getting rows and rows and rows. So I'm just going to add rows so that I get two pages now. And you notice that when I scroll down to the bottom, I don't have my headings on the second page. So I'm going to go back up here to the top, and I'm going to select my first row, which is my heading row. And on the Layout tab, there is a button that says Repeat Header Rows. So before I click on that, I want to select the rows that I want to repeat. So I will click on that button. And now when I scroll down to the next page, there you go. I have my headers. And if this table went to the third page, I would have my headers at the top. So as long as you click on that and then you go down. Now the one thing you can't do is you can't insert a page break, because if you do that, what happens is you've just created, this is the same as splitting a table. So what happens is now that these are two separate tables. So then the page break, you lose your headings. So I'm going to select those rows that down here, I'm going to do the Alt Shift up arrow. I've joined the table back together, and now you can see that I have my headings at the top. Though I didn't get rid of that page break, so if I go to Home and turn my Show Hide button on and look to see if that page break is there, oh, I don't see, yeah, there it is. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that and hit my Delete key to take it out. Click on the Show Hide button to get rid of the Show Hide symbols and go back to my table and my Layout tab. So you don't want to use page breaks if you want your headings to repeat on every page. I'm also going to go to the last cell in the first page, and I'm going to type the following: data in table is larger than cell. Now you'll notice that you'll notice that the text went down into the cell. And there's a setting, usually when that setting is not turned on, it should have split it. But if you go to the Property button on the Layout ribbon, and you go to the Row tab, it says Allow Row to break across pages. So what that should have done is it should have split the cell so that some of the data was here and some of the data was down here. And really, you don't want that to be checked, so that when you're typing your information, you don't want it to split. You don't want it to allow the data to break across pages. So I usually uncheck that. Now, if I hit my delete key to take it out, so normally when you would type, if this happens, if let's say some of the data is here and some of the data is down here, click here, go to Properties, click on the Row tab, and uncheck Allow Row to break across pages. So now I'm going to go ahead and delete these. Somebody's microphone's not muted. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drag down, and I'm going to go ahead and drag down, and now you notice that I'm going to go ahead and go to delete, and I'm going to delete my rows. Now I'm going to go ahead and add another row, and I'm going to go underneath the numbers in the Number of Employees column. I'm going to go to the Layout tab, and I'm going to go ahead and hit the Formula button. When I do that, it comes up with equals sum above, meaning that it's going to total the numbers above. So I'm going to hit OK, and when I do that, notice that I get a total. The only thing is, when you're working in a Word table, that the number doesn't change. So if I click here on the number and you see there's a gray box, that means that's a field. So if I right click on it and hit Update Field, or I can do the Update Field button, which is F9. And so when I click on the number and hit the F9 key, it should automatically update my number for me. So it's not like in Excel where it would automatically update. You have to update that field once you enter it in. The other thing you'll notice too, that it also, when you hit the Formula button, you could also do things like count or average. It would just be equals count left or count above or average above, whatever it is that you want to do. So there I have my total. I'm going to go to the Design ribbon now and talk about the borders. So you notice I have borders around here. If I want to change that, I can go here and choose different border style. I can use a different border thickness. I can change the border color if I want. And then it turns on the border painter. When it turns on the border painter, then what I can do is I can just take that and I can just drag across or click on the actual line that's here, and I can go ahead and add this border to whatever line I want to add it to. And I could do that, but that's the long way. So I'm going to turn off the border painter. I'm going to go ahead and select the entire table. I'm going to go to borders and choose all borders, and then it takes whatever border style I used here and it adds it to whatever cells I selected. So if I just wanted to add the border around the headings, I just select the headings and go to all borders. But I want to choose the border styles first, the color, before I do that, and then do it, and then I can change it that way. You can also, if you want, you can save this table style for yourself. So if I select my table and I go to Insert and I click on the drop down arrow under Table and go to Quick Tables, notice that it says Save Selection to Quick Tables Gallery. So that if I click on it, and I'm going to call it my purple table, and hit OK, the next time I want to use that style, I just need to click on the drop down arrow under Tables, go to Quick Tables, and then if I scroll down to the bottom, you'll see that my table style is right there that I just created, and I can use it again and again if I want to. Now, when you delete a table, if you select the table and hit your delete key, it only deletes the contents. It doesn't delete the borders and the lines. So when you want to delete a table, you want to go to Layout, Delete, and then delete table. Or if you're a right clicker, you can also right click if you want. The other thing under design is that you have the different table styles that you can choose. So if you notice the More button here where it says Table Styles, when you click on it, you get a whole list of styles that come up, and it has the live preview, though even though the live preview is on top of the table, you just click on the style that you want and it applies that style to that table. So you can use some of the predefined table styles if you want for your table to make it look nicer. Now below my text, I'm going to go ahead and put in the random text feature. So by typing this, I'm going to do one paragraph with 10 sentences, and I'm going to hit enter. And then I'm going to go here and I'm going to size my table just to make it a little smaller. And then I'm going to also now select my table, go to the Layout tab, go to Properties, and on the Table tab, I'm going to change my text wrapping to Around. And then I'm going to click on OK. And then what this is going to allow me to do is take my table by grabbing the anchor in the upper left-hand corner, moving my table, and as I move my table, the text wraps around it. So you can see that if you want to move your table in your document and put the text around, you can do that by just clicking and dragging it, but changing the property settings to Around so that the text moves around the table as you drag it. Otherwise, if you don't, the text will be above and below the table. Now I'm going to bring up a new document, and I'm going to go ahead and talk about the draw table. So if I click on Draw Table, I can actually draw a table, and notice that it's using the format on the Design tab of how I already had this set. So if I didn't want that, I'm going to go ahead and hit my Escape key. I'm going to go ahead and delete my table. And I'm going to go back to when I insert my table and go to Draw. Then I can change, well, I'll go back and change it later. So I'm going to select this. I'm going to go ahead and do this. Notice I'm drawing the table. I'm creating the table that I want. So on the Layout tab, I'm going to turn off the Draw Table or hit Escape, and that turns my mouse back to a mouse instead of a pencil to draw. I'm going to go to Design, I'm going to go to Border Styles, and I'm just going to choose the basic border, and then I'm going to go ahead and turn off the Border Painter, select the table, and go back to All Borders, so that now my table is the regular lines that I had before. I'm going to type my text in here. And then I'm going to select my table, go to Layout, go to my Alignment, and do Middle, so that now my text is in the middle. And so you can actually create a custom table if you want using the Draw. Now you can go to Draw anytime and draw your lines whenever you want to create your lines. And then you can then put your mouse and drag them, just like as you draw the table, then the features for the table will work the same way as if you created a table another way. So when you draw a table, you still have the table buttons and you can still do everything else that you want. There's also an eraser. If you click on the eraser, you can click on the lines to erase the lines that you want. Notice that if you get rid of a line, it merges. So it's just like the merge cell button where it took those two cells and merged them into one. So again, I can hit Escape to turn the eraser off. So you can manually draw and add to your table and erase the lines if you want also. I'm going to close this table that I just created and don't save it. I want to go back to this table, so I'm going to drag it out, stretch it out a little bit. And then I'm going to select it and I'm going to go up here to Layout, and it says Convert Text to Text. I'm going to click on that, and I want to use tab, so I'm going to say OK. And what it does is it automatically takes my table and it puts it in my document. That's just the spacing in my document, which is the reason why you see the spacing. So if I go back to Home and I go to Paragraph and I want to change it to single, I can. And that I didn't change the paragraph spacing, so I'm not going to worry about that right now. So you can see that now this is no longer in a table. Also, if I click in here and I want to select all the text, and then I want to go ahead and I use the tabs and the ruler to move my column around. So if they're too close together and you want to space them out, you can do that. Then the other thing is, if I want to turn tabbed data into a table, I would go to Insert, I would click on the drop down here, I would go to Insert Table, and then it would take my tabbed information and put it into a table format. So you can actually take your text and convert it back out to tabs, or you can go ahead and do that the same thing with information and put it in a table. So that's the end of the table portion of our webcast. I hope this was useful information. Now what I'm going to do is talk about the mail merge. So I'm going to close my table that I just created, open up a new document. I'm going to minimize this and show you that I have a mailing list that I created in a Word table. So you can see that I have that Word table right here. And the other mailing list that I created was in an Excel spreadsheet. So if I open up the Excel spreadsheet, you can see that I have my names and I have email addresses, and I'm having this mouse is sensitive. So you can see that I have my email addresses. If I wanted to send an email, mass email out, I can do that. So we're going to talk about the mail merge feature now. So, and we're going to be using both these lists when I do that. So I'm going to go ahead and close this. I'm going to open Word back up, and now I'm going to go to the Mailings tab. There are two ways to use mail merge. One is to use the wizard, and one is to do it manually. So first thing I'm going to do is use the wizard. So I'm going to go here to the drop down arrow under Start Mail Merge, and I'm going to go to Step-by-Step Mail Merge Wizard. Over here on the right, you can see that there's a pane that appears, and it asks me what kind of document am I creating. Am I creating letters? Am I doing email messages, envelopes, labels? So I'm going to do letters. Then down below, there are 6 steps to the process. So I'm going to hit Starting the Document. It asks me what document do I want to use for my letters. I'm going to use the current blank, but if you already had typed your letter, you could go to Start Existing and then hit Open and go to open that existing document that you already created. I don't have one, so I'm just going to use the top one. Then it says go to this is step 2, so I'm going to go to step 3. You can always go back a step if you need. It says use an existing list. So I'm going to use my Word or Excel list. Select from your Outlook contacts. You can do that as long as your contacts, you have addresses and your addresses are in your right spot, like in, street, address, zip, state. So, you can use your Outlook contacts to send mailings, and you could type a new list. I am going to click on Type a New List. Just say that you don't have a list and you wanted to create one. So if you click on Type a New List and hit Create, it's going to bring up the new address list box. If I click on Customize Columns, then it gives you automatically some fields. If I don't want all the fields that are here, I can actually delete them. So I can go ahead and delete the ones that I don't want. Unfortunately, though, you can't delete more than one. You got to do one at a time. So some of the fields that I don't want, I'm going to get rid of. And then if you want to add fields, you can hit Add button and add fields. Like if I wanted to put their title, the title would be like Mr. Ms. But if I wanted to put a second title in there, I could. And then finally, you can move the fields around, so you can move them up or down and put them in the order that you want. Once you hit OK, then you can go ahead and you can start typing. So if I start typing my information, and I'm going to go ahead and put in, I'm just going to do 2 records because I really don't want to spend too much time on this. And then I forgot to hit my tab key. So now I'm going to hit tab, and then I'm going to do another record. I'm going to go ahead and all right, so I'm done. I hit OK. It's going to ask me to save it. I'm going to go ahead and save it on the desktop as my create my mailing list. It saves this in Access. So when you create this, it automatically takes this list and adds it to Access. You can see that the list is here. It says, what am I using? This is the data source it's linked to. If I hit edit, it would bring back my list and I could add more entries if I need to. I could delete an entry if I need to. I can locate an entry if you had a lot of entries in here. I'm going to go ahead and hit cancel and hit OK. Now it is using this list right now for this mail merge. But what if I wanted to select a different list? I'm going to hit select a different list. I'm going to go back to my desktop and I'm going to use that Word document that I created my mailing list here and hit open. So now what it is now this letter is attached to this mailing list where I actually have names and addresses, and I'm going to use this instead. So I'm going to hit, and this was the one that was created in the Word table. So this is how you can utilize the tables that I just showed you as a mailing list. The only thing I had in that document was a Word table. I didn't have any other text. I just had the Word table with all the information in it. I'm going to hit write your letter. Now if I wanted to, I could hit address block and OK, and that would automatically, on the mailings ribbon, there's a preview button that if I click on it, it would show me all of the addresses. And I'm going to go ahead and if I want to fix that, one of the things with the settings in here with Word is this setting where they have it set to double and multiple and spacing in between. So now that I fixed that, I'm going to go back to mailings. Otherwise, if you didn't want to do that, you could also insert the fields manually, which we're going to do now. So I'm going to turn the preview off. I want the preview turned off when I type this. And I'm going to say dear. And I'm going to go to the Insert Merge Field button, and I'm going to say title, like Mr. Ms., space, insert, last name, comma, space, space. It was a pleasure meeting you to discuss future opportunities with, and then I'm going to go here and choose company, sincerely, now, if I want to see what this looks like, I could hit the preview button, and then I can see there's a little button here to go from record to record. So in case I forgot punctuation, I have one too many spaces in here, I could fix it. But when you fix it, turn the preview off so you can see the field names. Now down here, I'm still using the wizard. So it says preview your letters. So if I click on that, then I could do the same thing over here. You notice it turns the preview results button on. I could use this to look at each letter if I wanted. I could go to edit recipient list if I needed to. And if I wanted to add more to my table, I could click here and hit edit. Or the other thing I could do too is if you were looking for somebody, you could hit find recipient, you could sort your list, you could do whatever you want. Now you have to be very careful that you don't hit, if you want to exclude somebody from this mailing, you can hit exclude, but if you accidentally hit this button, you're excluding the people that were right here in front of you. So if you go to edit recipient list, then just check who you want to bring back just to make sure, because I want to send it to everybody. But if there were people you didn't want to send this to, this particular instance, you could uncheck them also. So you can actually go through the list and uncheck who you don't want to get the letter. Now I'm going to hit complete the merge. Now there's two options here. I could send all my letters directly to the printer by clicking on print, and then I could print all, and I would get a separate letter for each person. You don't want to use the regular print, because that would only print the letter that you're looking at. It wouldn't print all of them. When you're doing a mail merge, you have to use the mail merge print to get a letter for each person. Then if I go to edit individual letters, let's say for James, he's in Kentucky. I'm going to be in Kentucky next week and I want to meet him for lunch. I want to add a sentence to his letter. So I'm going to choose current record and hit OK. What this did is it took this letter and put it as a separate document. If I click on the Mailings tab, you'll notice that the Mail Merge buttons are grayed out. This is a separate letter. So now I could go here and say, I will be in town next week. Let's meet for lunch or dinner. Now, to print this letter, I would just go to the File, Print option here and just do the normal print because this isn't part of the mail merge. I'm going to go back down here to my mail merge letter and I'm going to go ahead and notice that because I already am sending him a letter, if I want, I can go to edit recipient list up here and then I can uncheck him because he's already getting a separate letter, so I don't want to have to print another letter for him. Now, notice too that I'm going to go ahead and close my mail merge wizard, but I still have all of my options up here in my ribbon. I can go to edit recipient list to uncheck or check recipients. I can insert fields if I want. I can preview my results. I can send it to the printer and I can edit individual documents. I'm not ready to print, so I'm going to close this letter. When I close it, it tells me that this is a document attached to a data source. Do you want to save it? I'm going to say yes. I'm going to hit save. I'm going to go ahead and call this my letter. And now, and I'm saving this for something else when we do envelopes. So now when I go ahead and, where did it go? Here it is. Sorry, it ends up on the other screen. There they are. Okay, so now if I double click on that letter to open it up, it tells me, do you want to open the data source that's connected with this? If I say yes, and then go to mailings, edit recipient list, that's the data source that's connected with it. But let's say I wanted to send this letter to a different group now. So if I go down here and double click on that, letter, and I say no, now it's not connected to a data source. But if I go to mailings and I hit select recipients using an existing list, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to link it to the Excel list that I showed you earlier. So I'm going to double click on that list. It's on, my information is on sheet, so I'm going to hit OK. And now when I go to my edit recipient list button, this is the names from Excel. And if I want to preview that, I hit preview results, and now I can go and I can see. Now you notice that for some reason my titles and my names, there's a space there. Now because I can't fix that, I'm going to, with the address block, I'm going to get rid of the address block and I'm just going to manually insert my fields. So I'm going to go ahead and use my spacing, enter, address, or company, enter. I'm going to go here, do address, enter. I'm going to go here and do city, comma, space, state, space, space, zip. Now, if I go to preview, now when I go from record to record, you can see I don't have that space like I did before. So sometimes the address block will work and sometimes it won't. It just depends on the data. Now, I'm going to close this and I'm going to save it, and I'm going to minimize this. And let's say that I want to do labels now. So I'm going to hit the new button to bring up my blank document and go to mailings. I'm going to start the mail merge, but this time I'm not going to use the wizard. I'm going to go directly to labels. When you do this, this is a mail, there's a difference between these labels and a mail merge label, because this is where you're actually taking a list and doing separate labels for each one. So they have the label vendors up here. Didn't know Microsoft made labels, but I guess they do. So they say Microsoft here. I'm going to go to Avery because that's Avery US letter. That's usually the most common. And usually on the box they'll have a number. So I'm going to go ahead and scroll up. And I'm going to go to, I'm looking for the 5160 label. That's the one that has 3 columns. And so I'm going to select that label and hit OK. Now, notice that I have my labels, and up at the top, I have my table tools. Well, guess what? We just saw this earlier. Guess what? Labels are tables. How do you like that rhyming? So basically, when you create a label, it's a table. You are in a table format. If for some reason, when you choose the labels, you don't see the grid lines, remember, go to Layout and click on the View Grid Line button, because that happens a lot of times. Sometimes when you bring up the labels, you don't see the guides. You need to see the guides to know where you're typing. Then I'm going to go back to my Mailings ribbon. I'm going to go in, I need to connect this now to a data source. So I'm going to go to Select Recipients, Use an Existing List, go to my Excel spreadsheet that had my list of names, and now I can insert my fields. So I can do Insert Title, First Name, Last Name, Enter, Company, Enter. I'm going to have to fix the spacing and the font. So I'm going to go ahead and insert my fields. Then I'm going to select my table. Now, you might think that you would click here to select your table, go to Home, hit your center button. It's not centering it. So what I normally do is I go and click above the columns to get that black arrow and highlight my tables this way. So if I want to center them, if I want to change my spacing, if I want to, what did I do here? I should have fixed this before. All right, and then if I want to make it bold, or if I want to change the color, whatever it is that you want to do. Now, going back to the mailings, if I want to, I'm going to select these fields. So it says highlight merge fields. So I'm highlighting the merge fields. I want to select these fields, and then because I have multiple labels, I'm going to hit the Update Labels button. And now what it did is it took this and it put all these fields on every label. If you change this for any reason, let's say you decide you want to put title in there, and so you added a title and you want to update this, just do the first one and then select the fields and hit Update Labels again, so it updates all the labels. It puts in the next record command, so it knows that when you do this, when I hit the preview results, each of these labels will be a different record. So if I hit preview results, now I have a separate label for each person. Ready to go. Now I'm going to bring up the new button again, and I want to talk about, on the Mailings tab, regular labels. So sometimes you don't want to do a mail merge. Sometimes you just want labels that you're going to stick in the printer and you're going to print them, or you want self-addressed labels so you don't have to always type out your labels. So when you don't want to use the mail merge, in the Create section on the left, you're going to hit Labels, and then again you go to Options to choose the label that you want, which I've already done. It always remembers the last label that you used, and in that label box I'm going to put the name of the person, I'm going to put their title, I'm going to put the company that they work for, their address, so I can do two things. I can do full page of the same label, so then when I hit New Document, it automatically gives me a full page of the same label, and if I wanted to format it, I just select it and I could format it, center it, whatever I want to do. Then I could send this to the printer, and then as you need labels, if you need self-addressed labels or labels, you just pull these off. And I do this all the time. I just do self-addressed for me, and then if I have to send things to people all the time, I print these, put them in a drawer, and then I just peel them off as I need them. The other way to do this would be when you go to labels is to, you could also say single page labels, and then you could say print row 1, column 1, and then the next time you put it in, you could say column 2. That way you could just stick them in and print them as you need them as you go. You can also do envelopes. So if you remember that letter that we did earlier to James, if I wanted to do an envelope to James, I would go ahead and just click on envelopes. It automatically puts his address in there because my cursor was in the address part of it. And then if I want to, I could add this to the document, and then I would have an envelope, and then I could have the letter to print for it. Then when you go to print, when you go to File and you go to Print, if you have an envelope feeder, you could go to Page Setup, and on the Paper tab, you could say the first page goes to this tray or feeder, and then the second page would go to this. If not, then you would have to put the envelope in and just print the current page. And it also then would tell you, then you could print it that way. Now, the other thing and the final thing I want to just mention real quick with the mailings is that if I go to Start Mail Merge, I can also do email messages. So if I do email message, it brings up this window, and I can say, you know, hello, we are having a Windows 8 meeting next Tuesday. Please here at our location at 6 o'clock. Now, when you go to Start Mail Merge, you want to select your recipients again, which I'm going to do. I'm going to use the Excel list because they did have email addresses. And when I want to do that, then I can hit Edit Recipient List to see. Then when you go ahead and finish merge, you see it says Send Email Message. So when I hit Send Email Message, I say use this email field, because I have an email field. I could put in a subject, and when I hit OK, it's going to send this email to every single person that I have an email address for. So that's another thing that you can do with the mail merge. And then it'll go to your whatever email you have and then send it out. So that it also works that way too. And then finally, the other thing too with the mailings is that when you're doing a letter and you select your recipients, you can also use your Outlook contacts. And depending on your Outlook contacts, if you have addresses and, you know, city and state phone numbers and zips in there, you could also use your Outlook contacts to do mailings, letters, labels, things like that. So I hope you enjoyed today's session. It was a little bit combination of of tables and mail merging, but seeing how tables, storing your data in tables and using that data for mail merges as labels and letters and things like that, it just shows you how the two work together. So I hope you enjoyed today's session. If you have any questions, feel free to ask at the end, and I will go ahead and answer. Also remember, this will be put on YouTube and in the next upcoming weeks, and you can watch it at your own speed and take notes if you want to. Also, the next session is going to be the PowerPoint enhancing your presentations, learning about working with the Slide Master, among other things. So I hope you enjoyed today's session, and thank you for participating.